I'm Sarah, 23 years old. My mother left me stranded at Chicago O'Hare Airport when I was 15 because I wouldn't give up my seat for her stepdaughter. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You'll survive." Then she walked away with her new family to catch their flight to Hawaii. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt abandoned by someone who was supposed to protect you. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I stood there watching her disappear into the crowd, my boarding pass for Hawaii crumpled in my hand. Completely worthless now. The gate agent kept announcing final boarding calls while I tried calling my mom's phone. Straight to voicemail, every single time. That's when I remembered the business card tucked in my wallet. The one I'd carried for 3 years but never used. My biological father's information, written in his careful handwriting from our only meeting when I was 12. "Call me if you ever need anything," he'd said. I thought it was just something adults say. My fingers shook as I dialed his number. It rang twice before his deep voice answered. William Harrison. "Hi, this is Sarah. Sarah Harrison. Your daughter." The words felt strange in my mouth. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then he said, "Sarah? What's wrong? Where are you?" I explained the situation in broken sentences, trying not to cry as travelers rushed past me toward their gates, toward their vacations, toward their families who actually wanted them there. "I'll be there in 2 hours," he said without hesitation. "Don't move from that gate. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming." He hung up before I could ask how he planned to get from New York to Chicago in 2 hours. I found out when a sleek black car pulled up to the departure curb and a man in a pilot's uniform approached me. "Miss Harrison? I'm Captain Morrison. Your father sent me to collect you." The private jet was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Cream leather seats, polished wood surfaces, and enough space for 12 people. As we climbed above the clouds, I stared out the window wondering what kind of life I was flying toward. To understand how I ended up abandoned at an airport, you need to know about my mother's transformation after she remarried. When I was 6, Linda Harrison became Linda Fletcher, and suddenly everything about our little family changed. My stepfather, David Fletcher, was everything my biological father wasn't, according to my mother. Stable, present, devoted to family. He came with his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who became the center of our new household from day one. "Emma needs extra attention right now," Mom explained whenever I asked why my bedtime stories had stopped. "She's adjusting to having a new sister." I tried to be the perfect big sister. I shared my toys, helped Emma with homework, and never complained when she got the bigger bedroom because she had been through so much with the divorce. But perfect wasn't enough. Nothing I did could compete with Emma's natural ability to charm adults. She had these huge blue eyes that would fill with tears at exactly the right moments, and a way of making everything sound like someone else's fault while maintaining complete innocence. When Emma accidentally broke my grandmother's music box, Mom consoled her for being so upset about the accident. When Emma forgot to mention the school carnival until the night before, Mom stayed up making cupcakes while lecturing me about watching out for my little sister better. By the time I turned 12, the dynamic was firmly established. Emma was the daughter who needed protection and patience. I was the one who should know better, do better, be better. The Hawaii trip had been planned for months. David's company retreat included family members, and Emma had been talking about swimming with dolphins for weeks. I'd been looking forward to it too, saving my babysitting money for souvenirs and researching snorkeling spots. 3 days before departure, David's elderly mother had a medical emergency. Someone needed to stay behind to help coordinate her care and watch the house. "Sarah should stay," Emma announced at dinner. "She's older and more responsible." I watched my mother's face as she considered this, not with the expression of someone solving a difficult problem, but with the look of someone who'd already made her decision and was grateful for a convenient excuse. "That actually makes sense," Mom said slowly. "Sarah, you're mature enough to handle things here." And honestly, Emma would be devastated to miss this trip. The betrayal hit like ice water. 9 years of being the reliable one, the understanding one, the one who sacrificed for family harmony, and this was my reward. The private jet touched down at a small airport in Connecticut that I'd never heard of. As we descended the steps, I saw him waiting by a black SUV, exactly as I remembered, but somehow more imposing. William Harrison looked like money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. "Sarah." He said my name like he'd been practicing it. "You look just like your grandmother did at your age." He didn't try to hug me or force false warmth. Instead, he gestured toward the car. "Are you hungry? We can stop somewhere, or Mrs. Chen has dinner waiting at the house." The house turned out to be an understatement. The estate sat on what looked like several acres, with a circular driveway leading to a mansion that belonged in architectural magazines. As we pulled up, a woman in her 50s appeared at the front door. "This is Mrs. Chen, my house manager," William explained. "She'll show you to your room. We'll talk after you've had a chance to settle in." My room was larger than our entire apartment back in Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens, and someone had already placed fresh flowers on the nightstand. A walk-in closet contained clothes in my exact size, from casual wear to formal dresses, all with the tag still attached. Mrs. Chen noticed my confusion. "Your father had these delivered this afternoon. He asked for a variety since he wasn't sure of your preferences." Dinner was served in a dining room with a table that could seat 20, though only 2 places were set. William had changed into casual clothes, but even his relaxed look probably cost more than my mother's monthly grocery budget. "Tell me about school," he said as Mrs. Chen served something that looked like restaurant-quality salmon. I found myself talking more than I had in months. About my AP classes, my part-time job at the local library, my college plans. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and taking mental notes. "Your mother never mentioned you were planning to major in journalism," he said finally. "She thinks it's impractical. She wants me to study something more stable, like accounting." William's expression hardened slightly. "And what do you want?" "To write, to tell stories that matter, to travel and see the world beyond Illinois." He nodded slowly. "Those are worthy goals. We should discuss how to make them happen." That night, lying in Egyptian cotton sheets in a room that cost more to furnish than most people's cars, I wondered what my mother was doing in Hawaii. Was she even thinking about me? Or was she enjoying her vacation, relieved to finally have the family she'd always wanted without the complication of her first daughter? Living with William Harrison was like attending an intensive course in how the other half lives. Everything operated on a different level, from the daily household schedule that Mrs. Chen managed with military precision to the casual way William discussed business deals worth millions over breakfast. "I have meetings in London next week," he mentioned while reviewing his calendar. "Would you like to come?" Mrs. Chen can arrange for a tutor to help you keep up with schoolwork." Just like that, London was an option. Not someday, not if we saved enough money, but next Tuesday if I wanted. The house itself revealed new surprises daily. A library with first edition books and a sliding ladder straight out of a movie. A home theater with velvet seats and a popcorn machine. A wine cellar that looked like it belonged in a castle. I learned that William owned 3 other properties, including an apartment in Manhattan and a ski lodge in Colorado. But it wasn't the wealth that impressed me most. It was the way he treated people. Mrs. Chen wasn't just an employee. She was consulted on household decisions and genuinely cared for. The groundskeeper's son was attending college on a scholarship William had quietly arranged. The local charity that provided after-school programs had received anonymous donations that I was beginning to suspect weren't so anonymous. "Why did you leave?" I asked one evening as we walked through the gardens. The question had been building for days. William stopped beside a fountain, his hands clasped behind his back. "Your mother told you I abandoned you both, didn't you?" He turned to face me fully. "Sarah, there are things about my marriage to your mother that you don't understand. Things I hoped you'd never need to know. I'm 15, not 5. I can handle the truth." He studied my face for a long moment. "Your mother and I met in college. She was beautiful, charming, from a family that appeared respectable. I thought I loved her. It took me 3 years of marriage to realize I'd fallen in love with a performance. We sat on a marble bench surrounded by roses that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Linda is very good at becoming whatever someone needs her to be," he continued. "During our courtship, she shared my interests, my values, my dreams. After the wedding, gradually, that woman disappeared." "What do you mean?" "She began having affairs, spending money we didn't have on things she didn't need, making scenes in public when she didn't get her way. But the final straw was when I discovered she'd been forging my signature on checks, transferring money from my business accounts to hers." My stomach dropped. This wasn't the mother I knew, the one who lectured about honesty and responsibility. "I confronted her when you were 2. She promised to change, to get help. I wanted to believe her because I wanted you to have a stable home. But things only got worse." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. "I've kept these all these years, hoping I'd never need to show them to you." The photographs William handed me felt heavy in my hands, though they weighed nothing. Bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals, copies of checks with my father's forged signature, credit card bills for purchases that made no sense for a young mother, expensive jewelry and designer handbags while I apparently wore secondhand clothes. But the most damaging evidence was a series of photographs taken by a private investigator. My mother entering and leaving hotel rooms with different men. Timestamps showing these meetings occurred during days when she'd told William she was taking me to doctor appointments or visiting her sick aunt. This is why I left, William said quietly. I consulted with lawyers about custody options. But your mother threatened to disappear with you if I tried to take you from her. She said she'd move somewhere I'd never find you both. I stared at a picture of my mother laughing with a man I didn't recognize, taken when I was 3 years old. So you just gave up. I made the hardest decision of my life. I chose to leave before the situation became more toxic than it already was. I hoped that with time, distance, and the generous settlement I provided, your mother would mature and become the parent you deserved. He pulled out another folder. I hired investigators to check on you both periodically. I know about your academic achievements, your jobs, your college plans. I've been waiting for the right moment to reestablish contact. The evidence was overwhelming, but it raised new questions. If you knew she was a bad mother, why didn't you fight for custody? Because 15 years ago, courts rarely awarded custody to fathers unless the mother was proven completely unfit. Your mother was good at maintaining appearances, and I was afraid that a custody battle would traumatize you more than my absence would. My phone buzzed with a text message. Mom, finally. Having fun in Hawaii, sweetheart. Don't wait up. Emma and I are going to see the sunset from the hotel balcony. Love you. No mention of abandoning me at the airport. No acknowledgement that she'd left me stranded. Just casual vacation updates as if I was safely at home, not sitting in Connecticut learning that my entire childhood was built on lies. She doesn't even realize what she's done, I said, showing William the message. His jaw tightened. That's Linda. She rewrites reality to suit her needs. I suspect she's convinced herself that leaving you at the airport was somehow justified. What happens now? I asked. William's expression shifted, becoming harder, more determined. Now we make sure she never hurts you again. And we make sure she faces consequences for what she's done. He stood up, extending his hand to help me from the bench. Tomorrow we're going to visit my lawyer. It's time your mother learned that her actions have repercussions. The law office of Morrison and Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass building in downtown Hartford. William's lawyer, Patricia Morrison, was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. So Linda finally went too far, she said, after William explained the airport situation. I've been waiting for this call for 15 years. She spread documents across a conference table that could seat 20 people. Your father never stopped fighting for you, Sarah. He just had to be strategic about it. What she showed me redefined everything I thought I knew about my parents' divorce. Your father agreed to pay substantial alimony with one condition, Patricia explained. That your mother submit to regular financial audits and maintain appropriate living conditions for you. She violated those terms repeatedly. The audit reports painted a picture of my childhood that made my stomach turn. Money designated for my needs, education, and health care had been diverted to fund my mother's lifestyle. Thousands of dollars meant for my college fund had disappeared into her personal accounts. We documented everything, but couldn't act without putting you in an unstable situation, William said. Until now. Patricia pulled out a thick legal folder. Abandoning a minor child constitutes criminal neglect in Illinois. Combined with the financial improprieties we've documented, we have grounds for multiple legal actions. What kind of actions? I asked. First, we're filing for emergency custody based on abandonment and endangerment. Second, we're demanding a full accounting of all funds designated for your care over the past 12 years. Third, we're exploring criminal charges for the forged signatures and misappropriation of funds. My phone rang. Mom again. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message for everyone to hear. Sarah, honey, Emma found the cutest shell collection at the hotel gift shop. David bought her the whole set. We're having such a wonderful time. I hope you're not feeling too left out. Love you. The silence in the conference room was deafening. Even Patricia, who'd probably heard every type of family dysfunction imaginable, looked shocked. She genuinely doesn't understand what she's done wrong, Patricia observed. That's going to work in our favor. William's phone buzzed with a message. He read it, then looked up with an expression I couldn't quite identify. David Fletcher just texted me. Apparently Linda has been telling people in Hawaii that you chose to stay home because you don't like to travel. She's rewriting history in real time, Patricia noted, creating a narrative where she's the victim of an ungrateful daughter rather than a mother who abandoned her child. But the biggest revelation came when Patricia opened a sealed envelope that had been sitting in her safe for 15 years. Your father asked me to prepare this when you turned 18, but circumstances have accelerated our timeline. She handed me a document with official seals and signatures. This is a trust fund established in your name when your parents divorced. Your mother was supposed to inform you of its existence when you turned 16. The number on the bottom line made me dizzy. Enough money to pay for college, graduate school, and a comfortable start to adult life. Money that had been mine for years while I worked part-time jobs and stressed about student loans. She's been legally required to tell you about this fund for almost a year, Patricia continued. Her failure to do so constitutes fraud. I thought about all the times my mother had talked about financial stress, about how expensive my college dreams were, about how I needed to be more realistic about my future, all while sitting on a trust fund that would have solved every problem she claimed we had. What happens when she comes back from Hawaii? I asked. William and Patricia exchanged a look that told me they'd already planned this conversation. She'll find legal papers waiting for her, Patricia said, and a daughter who's finally old enough to understand the truth. The first sign that my mother's perfect vacation was crumbling came through Emma's Instagram stories. Posted from their hotel in Maui, they showed increasingly tense family moments. David looking stressed while my mother posed with tropical drinks. Emma sulking by the pool instead of her usual bright smile. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Your stepfather is smarter than your mother gives him credit for, William observed as we reviewed the social media posts in his study. He's starting to piece things together. Patricia had served the initial legal papers to David's business address, ensuring he'd receive them before they returned from Hawaii. The documents outlined the custody filing, the financial audit demands, and a restraining order preventing my mother from accessing any funds designated for my care. He's a successful businessman, William continued. Once he sees the financial evidence, he'll understand that your mother has been lying to him about far more than just the airport incident. Mrs. Chen brought us tea while we waited for Patricia's call. She'd been monitoring the situation through her contacts at various law enforcement agencies, because apparently my father's network included people everywhere. The credit card charges are particularly damaging, she'd explained earlier. Your mother used cards in your name to fund her lifestyle. That's identity theft, not just poor parenting. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from my mother, each more desperate than the last. Sweetie, I hope you're okay. The hotel Wi-Fi is terrible, so I haven't been able to call. Sarah, I'm getting some strange messages from people back home. Call me when you get this. Sarah, someone said you were seen at a law office. This is ridiculous. Call me immediately. I showed each message to William, who photographed them as evidence of her escalating panic. She's realizing that her actions have consequences, he said. But notice, she still hasn't acknowledged abandoning you at the airport. The breaking point came on their last day in Hawaii. Emma posted a story from their hotel room showing David on the phone, his face flushed with anger while my mother gestured frantically in the background. The caption read, "Family drama ruins vacation vibes." An hour later, my mother called from an unknown number. I put it on speaker for William and Patricia to hear. Sarah Elizabeth Harrison, you get home this instant. I don't know what lies people have been filling your head with, but this family nonsense stops now. Hello, Linda. William's voice was calm, controlled. Sarah is exactly where she belongs. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When my mother spoke again, her voice had changed completely. William, what are you doing with my daughter? Protecting her from someone who would abandon a child at an airport. I didn't abandon her. She chose to stay behind. Sarah, tell him you chose to stay. I looked at William, who nodded encouragingly. Mom, you left me at the gate without a boarding pass while you took Emma to Hawaii. That's abandonment. You're being dramatic. You could have taken a later flight. With what money? You took my credit card. You left me with $40 and no way to get home. Her voice turned sharp, calculating. You're turning her against me, William. Just like you always wanted to do. I'm simply giving her the truth you've hidden for 15 years. The call ended abruptly, but we knew it wouldn't be the last we'd hear from her. My mother's return from Hawaii was everything we'd anticipated and worse. David's business manager had intercepted the legal documents and briefed him during their layover in Los Angeles. By the time they landed in Chicago, their marriage was hanging by a thread. Emma's final Instagram post from the trip showed her alone in the airport, captioned, "When your family implodes at 30,000 feet." Patricia received the first call from my mother's hastily hired lawyer on Tuesday morning. She's claiming William kidnapped you, Patricia informed us during our conference call. She wants you returned immediately and is threatening to file criminal charges. On what grounds? William asked. Apparently, she's telling people you lured Sarah away with promises of money and luxury. She's painting herself as a desperate mother whose daughter was manipulated by a wealthy ex-husband. The irony was stunning. My mother, who had spent years manipulating financial documents and forging signatures, was accusing my father of manipulation. What's our response? I asked. Patricia's smile was sharp. We're scheduling a custody hearing for Friday. I've requested an emergency session given the circumstances. Your mother will have to explain her actions to a judge. The hearing preparations consumed the rest of the week. William hired a family therapist to evaluate my emotional state and document the impact of my mother's abandonment. The sessions were difficult but necessary, forcing me to articulate feelings I'd buried for years. Your mother's behavior follows a clear pattern, Dr. Reynolds explained after our third session. She presents herself as the victim while systematically undermining your emotional security. This airport incident is simply the most dramatic example of long-term emotional manipulation. Meanwhile, David Fletcher was conducting his own investigation. William's contacts reported that he'd hired forensic accountants to examine my mother's financial activities. The results were apparently damaging enough that he'd moved out of their shared home and was staying at a hotel. He's protecting himself, Patricia observed. Smart man. He's realized that Linda's legal troubles could contaminate his business reputation. Emma became an unexpected source of information. Apparently furious about her ruined vacation and embarrassed by the family drama playing out on social media, she began sharing details with friends that eventually reached William's network. According to Emma's accounts, my mother had spent the entire flight home insisting that I was an ungrateful daughter who'd always been jealous of Emma's relationship with David. She'd convinced herself that my father had somehow orchestrated the entire situation out of spite. She's completely rewritten history, William said after receiving the latest report. In her version, she's the long-suffering mother of a troubled teenager who was corrupted by her wealthy father's influence. The most damaging revelation came Thursday evening. David's accountants had discovered that my mother had been using Emma's social security number to open credit accounts, planning to fund their Hawaii trip with fraudulent credit cards. Only the airport incident had prevented a much larger financial crime. She was going to destroy that child's credit before she even turned 18, Patricia said grimly. David is now facing the reality that the woman he married is a serial fraudster who would sacrifice anyone, including his own daughter, for her immediate gratification. Friday morning arrived with news that my mother had fired her first lawyer and hired someone new, someone with a reputation for aggressive tactics and media manipulation. She's going to fight dirty, Patricia warned as we prepared for court. Are you ready for this? I straightened my shoulders, wearing the confidence my father had been teaching me all week. I've been ready for this my entire life. The courthouse was a circus. My mother's new lawyer had apparently contacted local news stations, spinning a story about a wealthy man using his influence to steal a daughter from her loving mother. 3 news vans were parked outside when we arrived Friday morning, but Patricia had been busy too. She'd provided journalists with copies of the financial documents, the forged signatures, and bank records showing years of misappropriated funds. By the time my mother arrived, the narrative had shifted significantly. Local teen abandoned at airport discovers trust fund mother hid for years, read the headline scrolling across the news van's digital display. My mother emerged from David's BMW looking like she'd aged 5 years in a week. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her face drawn with stress. David remained in the car, refusing to make eye contact as she walked toward the courthouse alone. Emma, however, surprised everyone by getting out and approaching our group. Sarah, she said quietly, I'm sorry about Hawaii. I didn't know she would actually leave you at the airport. I studied my stepsister's face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. Instead, I saw genuine guilt and confusion. What changed your mind? I asked. David showed me the bank records. He explained how Mom had been stealing from you for years. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. She tried to open credit cards in my name too. David stopped her, but barely. William stepped forward, his expression gentle. Emma, you're not responsible for your stepmother's choices. You were a child being manipulated by an adult. She told me you hated me, Emma continued, tears starting. That you were jealous because David loved me more than your dad loved you. She said that's why you were always so serious and distant. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. My mother had spent years poisoning Emma against me while simultaneously using my guilt over Emma's supposed needs to control my behavior. I never hated you, I said softly. I was trying to protect you from becoming like her. David finally emerged from the car, his face grim. He approached William directly. I owe you an apology, he said, and an explanation. Linda told me you were an abusive husband who had abandoned your family. She said Sarah was troubled because of your rejection, and that I needed to help stabilize her. She's very convincing, William replied without judgment. I've filed for divorce, David continued. I'm also pressing charges for the identity theft involving Emma. My lawyer will coordinate with yours to ensure Sarah receives every dollar that was stolen from her trust. Inside the courtroom, my mother's performance was spectacular and completely ineffective. She alternated between tears, anger, and indignation, insisting that she was the victim of a conspiracy designed to steal her daughter away. "Your Honor," her lawyer argued, "my client made an error in judgment during a stressful travel situation. She believed her daughter was mature enough to handle a delayed departure. This hardly constitutes abandonment worthy of losing custody." Patricia's response was methodical and devastating. She presented bank records showing systematic theft, photographs of forged signatures, documentation of the hidden trust fund, and recorded phone calls where my mother failed to take responsibility for her actions. "Your Honor, the respondent didn't make an error in judgment. She executed a pattern of financial fraud spanning 15 years, culminating in the abandonment of a minor child at an airport with no means of support or return transportation." The judge reviewed the evidence for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. "I've seen many custody cases in my career, but rarely have I encountered such clear documentation of systematic financial abuse combined with emotional manipulation." She turned to my mother. "Ms. Fletcher, your actions demonstrate a complete disregard for your daughter's welfare and legal rights." The custody ruling was comprehensive. William received full legal and physical custody. My mother was granted supervised visitation rights, contingent on completing financial restitution and psychological evaluation. All access to my trust fund was permanently revoked from her, but the real satisfaction came from an unexpected source. As we left the courthouse, Emma approached me one final time. "I'm going to live with my dad," she said. "David's getting full custody of me, too. He says Linda can't be trusted around children anymore." My mother's perfect second family had completely collapsed, and for the first time in my life, it wasn't my fault. The aftermath of the custody hearing brought revelations that made my mother's airport abandonment seem almost minor by comparison. Within a week, David's forensic investigation uncovered a web of financial crimes that stretched back to the beginning of their marriage. "She's been running credit card scams using both girls' information for 3 years, Patricia explained during our Monday meeting. The Hawaii trip was funded entirely through fraudulent accounts she'd opened using Emma's social security number. William reviewed the latest bank statements with grim fascination. She stole over $40,000 from Sarah's trust fund and was preparing to drain another $15,000 from accounts she'd opened in Emma's name. The criminal charges were filed Tuesday morning: wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and child endangerment. My mother's world was collapsing with stunning speed, and for once she couldn't manipulate her way out of the consequences. "The district attorney is particularly interested in the identity theft charges," Patricia informed us. "Using a minor's information for financial fraud carries severe penalties. She's looking at potential federal charges." But my mother wasn't finished fighting. Her third lawyer, apparently even more aggressive than the previous two, had crafted a defense strategy that was both predictable and pathetic. "She's claiming post-divorce psychological trauma," Patricia reported after receiving their filing. "They're arguing that your father's abandonment 15 years ago created emotional instability that explains her recent behavior." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of the sheer audacity. "So now Dad leaving to protect himself from her fraud is responsible for her committing more fraud?" "It's a desperate strategy," William observed. "But it tells us she still doesn't accept responsibility for her choices." The media attention had intensified throughout the week. My mother's story of the wealthy ex-husband stealing her daughter had initially gained sympathy, but Patricia's strategic release of financial documents had completely changed public opinion. "Local mother arrested for defrauding children's trust funds" was Thursday's headline. The accompanying article detailed the systematic theft from both Emma's and my accounts, making it clear that my mother was a predator who had victimized her own children. Emma visited Wednesday afternoon, looking healthier than I'd seen her in years. Living with David full-time had apparently been a positive change. "She called me last night," Emma said as we sat in William's garden. "She wanted me to testify that David had been abusive and that she was protecting me by taking the money." "What did you say?" "I told her I was done lying for her. David has been nothing but kind to me. She's the one who created all this chaos." It was strange, finally having a real conversation with Emma without my mother's manipulation influencing every word. For the first time, I saw glimpses of the sister I might have had under different circumstances. "I owe you a lot of apologies," Emma continued. "I was horrible to you for years because Mom convinced me you resented me. We were both being manipulated," I said. "The difference is you were 8 when it started. I should have recognized what was happening sooner." David joined us that evening for dinner, bringing news that would change everything. "Linda's legal troubles are worse than we initially thought," he reported. The FBI is investigating her financial activities. Apparently, she's been running similar scams on other family members for years. William set down his wine glass carefully. Other family members? Her sister in California thought Linda was investing money for her retirement. Turns out Linda was just depositing the checks into personal accounts. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from multiple victims over the past decade. The scope of my mother's criminal enterprise was staggering. She hadn't just destroyed our family. She'd been systematically defrauding anyone who trusted her with money. There's something else, David added grimly. The investigators found evidence that she was planning to take Emma and disappear to Mexico. She'd been learning Spanish and researching expat communities for months. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. My mother hadn't just abandoned me at the airport. She'd been preparing to kidnap Emma and flee the country to avoid the consequences of her financial crimes. The airport incident might have saved Emma's life, Patricia observed when we briefed her the next morning. If Linda had successfully taken her to Mexico, Emma might never have been recovered. As we prepared for the criminal trial, I realized that my mother's moment of cruelty at O'Hare Airport had actually been the catalyst that exposed years of criminal behavior and potentially prevented an international kidnapping. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best outcomes. The federal courthouse in Chicago was a different atmosphere entirely from our family court experience. No news vans, no dramatic entrances, just the serious business of criminal justice. My mother sat at the defendant's table looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made her appear older and more fragile. But I wasn't fooled by the appearance. Neither was the prosecutor. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh began, "the defendant didn't make mistakes. She didn't have momentary lapses in judgment. For over a decade, Linda Fletcher executed a carefully planned criminal enterprise designed to defraud family members, financial institutions, and most horrifically, her own children. The evidence presentation took 3 days. Bank records showing systematic theft, forged documents with my father's signature, credit applications using Emma's social security number, and most damaging of all, the passport applications and travel research proving my mother had been planning to flee the country with Emma. The defendant opened 17 fraudulent credit card accounts using her daughter's information," Walsh continued. "She stole over $65,000 from trust funds established for her children's education, and when her crimes were discovered, she attempted to kidnap one child while abandoning another at an airport. My mother's defense lawyer tried the psychological trauma argument again, but federal prosecutors had done their homework. They presented evidence of similar fraudulent activities dating back to her college years, long before she'd met my father. This is not a woman driven to crime by emotional distress," Walsh argued. "This is a career criminal who specialized in exploiting family relationships for financial gain." I testified on day 4, walking the jury through years of financial manipulation disguised as maternal concern. The questions were difficult, but necessary. "Did your mother ever explain why you couldn't access your trust fund for college expenses?" Walsh asked. "She told me there wasn't enough money. She said I needed to be more realistic about my future and consider community college instead of my dream schools. All while sitting on a trust fund worth over $100,000? Yes. Did she ever suggest you take out student loans for your education?" "Constantly. She filled out loan applications for me and insisted I sign them even though I qualified for the trust fund payments." The defense cross-examination was predictably nasty. My mother's lawyer tried to paint me as a spoiled teenager angry about not getting a vacation, but Patricia had prepared me well. "Isn't it true that you resented your stepfather's success?" the defense attorney asked. "No. I resented being lied to about my own financial resources while watching my mother spend stolen money on luxury items. But you admit you were jealous of Emma's relationship with your mother?" I was confused by the double standards. Emma was praised for behavior I was punished for. I didn't understand that my mother was using me as a scapegoat while grooming Emma to be her next victim. William testified on day 5, presenting 15 years of documentation that painted a picture of patient, methodical investigation. He'd known my mother was stealing from my trust fund for years, but had waited for the right moment to act. "Why didn't you intervene sooner?" the prosecutor asked. "Because I needed ironclad evidence and I needed Sarah to be old enough to understand the truth. Moving too quickly would have allowed Linda to disappear with her, and I would have lost my daughter forever." David's testimony was devastating. He described years of financial manipulation, lies about my father's character, and the systematic grooming of Emma for identity theft. "When did you realize the extent of the defendant's criminal activities?" Walsh asked. "When I received the legal papers in Hawaii. Until that moment, I believed Linda was a devoted mother protecting her daughter from an abusive ex-husband. The truth was exactly the opposite. Emma testified via video link, her voice steady as she described my mother's attempts to turn her against me and her own father. She told me Sarah was dangerous, Emma said, that Sarah was jealous and might hurt me if I wasn't careful. I was terrified of my own stepsister because of lies Linda told me. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, my mother finally addressed the court directly. I expected tears, manipulation, or at least some acknowledgement of the damage she'd caused. Instead, she delivered a speech that perfectly summarized everything wrong with her character. Your Honor, I am a devoted mother who made sacrifices for my children's welfare. I am being punished for trying to provide them with opportunities their father refused to support. If I made errors in judgment, they were motivated by love, not greed. Even facing federal prison, she couldn't accept responsibility for her choices. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation, full restitution to all victims, including repayment of my trust fund with interest, and a permanent restraining order preventing contact with both Emma and me until we reached age 25. As she was led away in handcuffs, my mother looked directly at me for the first time during the trial. I expected to see anger, hatred, or blame. Instead, I saw confusion, as if she genuinely couldn't understand how her actions had led to this moment. That's when I realized that my mother wasn't evil in the traditional sense. She was something potentially more dangerous. A person completely incapable of understanding that other people's needs and rights were as important as her own wants. Today, I'm 23 years old and just graduated from Northwestern University's journalism program with honors. The trust fund my mother tried to steal paid for every semester, every textbook, and every opportunity that shaped my career. I'm starting as an investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune next month, specializing in financial crimes and family fraud cases. Emma is 18 now and thriving. She's attending college in California, studying psychology with plans to work with children who've experienced family trauma. David walks her down the aisle at graduation, and she calls him Dad without any reservations. We text regularly, sharing the kind of sisterly relationship we might have had all along without my mother's interference. William and I have built something I never expected, an actual father-daughter relationship, not one based on guilt, obligation, or financial dependency, but on mutual respect and genuine affection. He taught me that love doesn't require sacrifice of self-worth, that support doesn't come with strings attached, and that true family protects each other without keeping score. You could have chosen bitterness, he told me last month over dinner. You could have let Linda's betrayals make you cynical about trust and love. Instead, you chose growth. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing harmful behavior. It means refusing to let someone else's toxicity poison your future. I don't hate my mother anymore, but I don't miss her either. She made her choices. I'm making mine. Mrs. Chen still manages William's household with quiet efficiency, and she's become something like a grandmother to me. She taught me to cook traditional Chinese dishes and listens patiently when I practice speaking Mandarin, which I'm learning for an assignment covering financial crimes in international markets. The media attention from my mother's case launched my journalism career in unexpected ways. Other families reached out with similar stories of financial manipulation and fraud. I've written 3 major articles about elder financial abuse and have a book contract to explore how family relationships become vehicles for systematic crime. But the most important lesson from this experience has nothing to do with money, legal victories, or career success. It's about the difference between being wanted and being needed, between conditional love and unconditional support, between performing for approval and being valued for who you really are. My mother needed me to be grateful, submissive, and willing to sacrifice my opportunities for her emotional comfort. She needed me to believe that I was lucky to have her, that I owed her my loyalty despite her betrayals, that family obligations trumped personal dignity. William wants me to be successful, independent, and confident enough to make my own choices. He wants me to trust my instincts, pursue my dreams, and never settle for relationships that require me to diminish myself for someone else's comfort. The difference shaped everything. Last week, I received a letter from my mother. Her first attempt at contact since the restraining order was modified to allow written communication. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Sarah, it began, I hope you're doing well. I've had time to think about everything that happened, and I want you to know that I still love you. I hope someday you'll understand that everything I did was trying to give you and Emma the best life possible. Prison is hard, but knowing that you're angry with me is harder. Please write back. I miss my daughter. No acknowledgement of the crimes. No acceptance of responsibility. No genuine apology for the years of manipulation and theft. Just another attempt to rewrite history and position herself as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. I showed the letter to William, who read it with the same expression he'd worn during her trial. "She's never going to change," he said quietly. "Some people are fundamentally incapable of seeing past their own needs." I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, not to treasure it, but to remind myself of who I never want to become. Then I deleted her prison address from my contact information and blocked any future mail from that facility. Some bridges, once burned, should stay destroyed. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family betrayal and building authentic relationships. Remember, you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, no matter how they're related to you. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away from people who refuse to love you properly. And if you're currently dealing with family members who manipulate, steal, or emotionally abuse you, please know that you deserve better. You deserve relationships that build you up instead of tearing you down. Trust your instincts, document everything, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Sometimes the family we choose to create is infinitely more valuable than the one we were born into.